I told my business partner I'd received the $5,000 he'd transferred for startup costs. He closed his laptop, leaned back slowly, and said, I transferred $200,000 last month. Where's the rest? The coffee shop went silent in my head. Not actually silent. Some kid was screaming about a cookie 2 tables over, the espresso machine was hissing, someone's phone kept buzzing, but I couldn't hear any of it. Just Derek's words looping. 200,000. I'd received 5. Derek Thornton sat across from me with his hands folded on the table, wedding ring catching the afternoon light through the window, his expression completely neutral. Not angry, not confused, just waiting. My mouth opened, closed, opened again. What? He tilted his head slightly. The wire transfer, February 14th. I sent $200,000 to the business account we set up. You confirmed receipt of $5,000. I'm asking where the other $195,000 went. His voice was so calm it made my skin crawl. I pulled out my phone with hands that had started trembling, opened my banking app, navigated to the business account. The deposit was right there. February 14th, 2024, wire transfer from Derek Thornton. Amount $5,000. Transaction successful. Confirmation number, everything. The numbers were right there in his bank's official interface, clear as day. I stared at that screen until my eyes burned. This doesn't make sense. There has to be a mistake. The bank must have... I called them this morning, before I texted you to meet. They confirmed the transfer went through successfully. $200,000 cleared my account February 14th at 9:47 a.m., routed to your business account ending in 7834. That was the right account number. He was correct. So, I'll ask again, his voice still maddeningly level. Where's my money? I felt like I was drowning in the middle of a coffee shop in broad daylight, surrounded by people casually sipping lattes. I don't have it. I don't have your money, Derek. I never got it. I only got $5,000. Check my account. Check the statements. I'll give you login access right now. Derek held up one hand. I'm not accusing you of anything yet. I'm trying to understand what happened. You're telling me you only received $5,000. My bank is telling me they sent $200,000. Someone is either lying or someone made a very expensive mistake. The yet hung in the air like smoke, not accusing me yet. I'd known Derek for 3 years. We'd met at a tech conference in Austin, bonded over terrible hotel coffee and a shared frustration with enterprise software that seemed designed to make everything harder. We'd stayed in touch, grabbed drinks when we were in the same city, talked about maybe building something together someday. 6 months ago, someday became real. We'd both been laid off within weeks of each other, him from a marketing director position, me from senior developer. And we decided to stop talking about it and actually do it. Apex Solutions was going to be our consulting firm. Custom software development, digital transformation, the works. We'd filed the LLC in January, set up the business banking, got our EIN, built a basic website. Derek was handling business development and client relations. I was the technical lead. The plan was simple. He'd provide the initial capital, since he'd gotten a better severance package, and I'd build out our service offerings while we landed our first clients. We'd split everything 50-50 once we were profitable. He'd mentioned he was going to seed the business with some of his severance. And when I saw that $5,000 deposit hit in February, I'd texted him thanks and got to work. I'd used it to pay for hosting, software licenses, a few contractor hours for design work, normal startup expenses. Now Derek was telling me he'd sent 40 times that amount, and I felt like reality was tilting sideways. I need to call my bank, I said, already pulling up the number. There's obviously been an error. They'll have records. They can trace this.
Derek nodded slowly. Good idea. I'll wait. I stepped outside onto the sidewalk, pulse hammering in my ears, and called the customer service line for First Community Bank. After navigating the automated system and waiting on hold for 7 minutes that felt like 7 hours, I got a representative named Paula, who sounded exhausted. I explained the situation: business account, wire transfer, discrepancy between sender and receiver amounts. Paula asked for my account details, put me on hold, came back 3 minutes later. "Sir, I'm showing the deposit that posted on February 14th for $5,000. That's the only wire transfer we received for that account on that date." My stomach dropped. "Can you check if there were any other transfers? Maybe it was split up. Maybe there's another deposit that didn't post correctly." More hold music. When Paula returned, her tone had shifted to careful patience. "I've reviewed the account history for the entire month of February. The only wire transfer received was for $5,000 on the 14th. No other incoming wires, no pending transactions, no failed deposits. Would you like me to send you a detailed statement?" I wanted to throw my phone into traffic. "Yes, please. And is there any way to verify what the sender actually transmitted, the amount they initiated?" Paula explained that they could only see what they received, but that if there was a discrepancy, the sending bank would have the origination records. She suggested Derek contact his bank to initiate a trace. She was professional, helpful, and completely unhelpful all at once. I thanked her, hung up, and stood there on the sidewalk watching cars pass, trying to organize my thoughts into something coherent. This had to be a banking error, some routing mistake. Money didn't just disappear. $195,000 didn't evaporate in the ether. But if Derek's bank said they sent it, and my bank said they never received it, then where the hell did it go? The logical part of my brain, the developer part that troubleshot systems for a living, started running through possibilities. Wrong account number, wrong routing number, intercepted transfer, fraud at the bank level, identity theft. I walked back inside. Derek was exactly where I'd left him, laptop still open, posture unchanged. I sat down and relayed what my bank had said. "They only show the $5,000, nothing else. They suggested you initiate a trace through your bank." Derek nodded like he'd expected this. "I already did this morning before I contacted you. They're investigating, but they said it could take 10 business days for results." He leaned forward slightly. "In the meantime, I need to understand something." The question felt like an accusation wrapped in curiosity. Did anyone else have access to the business account information, routing number, account number, login credentials? No, just me. I set it up. I have the login. The statements come to my email. Did you share the details with anyone? Accountant, contractor, family member? No, why would I? My voice came out sharper than I intended. Derek closed his laptop slowly. "Here's my problem. I sent $200,000, money from my severance, money I was depending on to support my family while we built this business, and it's gone. You're telling me you only received $5,000, which means either the banks lost $195,000 in transit or someone stole it. And if someone stole it, the list of people who could have done that is very, very short." The implication landed like a punch. "You think I stole from you?" It wasn't a question. Derek spread his hands. "I think someone stole from me. I think that someone had to have information about where the money was going. I think the most likely person with that information is sitting across from me. I don't want to think that. We're partners. We're friends. But I also just lost $200,000, so you'll understand if I'm not feeling particularly trusting right now." I felt anger rising up through the fear and confusion, hot and sharp. "I didn't steal your money, Derek. I have no reason to steal from you. This business is my way out of unemployment. I've been working my ass off building our service portfolio. I've been living off unemployment and savings. I am just as confused as you are about where your money went. I'll show you everything. Bank statements, transaction histories, every goddamn email. I have nothing to hide." Derek studied me for a long moment. Then he stood up, packed his laptop into his bag. "I hope that's true. I really do. Because if I don't have answers by the time the bank finishes their investigation, I'm going to have to explore other options. Legal options." He left his coffee untouched on the table and walked out. I sat there alone, surrounded by the ambient noise of the coffee shop that had come rushing back all at once, and tried to figure out how my life had just imploded in the space of 15 minutes. The thing that kept eating at me was the number, $5,000. That's what I'd received. That's what I'd seen. That's what I'd confirmed. But Derek's banks showed $200,000, which meant somewhere between his account and mine, $195,000 had vanished. That night, I couldn't sleep. I sat at my kitchen table with my laptop, pulling up every record I could find: bank statements, email confirmations, screenshots of the deposit notification. Everything said $5,000. I logged into the business account again, went through every transaction since we'd opened it in January. Initial deposit from me, $1,000. Wire transfer from Derek, $5,000. Various small expenses after that: hosting, software, contractor payment. Current balance, $3,218. Nothing unusual, nothing hidden, no mysterious withdrawals or transfers that I couldn't account for. I checked my personal accounts too, just to be thorough. No unexpected deposits, no transfers I didn't recognize. My savings account had been slowly draining since the layoff. Rent, groceries, insurance, the normal bleed of unemployment. My checking account showed the same depressing pattern: unemployment deposits every 2 weeks, gradual withdrawals for necessities. The credit card I rarely used had a balance of $1,200 from emergency car repairs the month before. None of it suggested someone with access to stolen funds. If I'd received $195,000, where would I have hidden it? Offshore accounts required documentation I didn't have. Cryptocurrency would leave a digital trail. Cash withdrawals of that magnitude would trigger bank reporting requirements. Even if I'd wanted to steal the money, which I hadn't, I wouldn't have known how to conceal it effectively. The fact that I was thinking through these scenarios, mentally defending my innocence to an imaginary jury, made me feel sick. This was what being accused did. It made you question your own reality, second-guess your own memories, rehearse explanations for things you didn't do. I pulled up the email from First Community Bank with the wire transfer notification, sent February 14th at 10:03 a.m. A wire transfer of $5,000 has been deposited to your account ending in 7834. Timestamp, amount, source listed as Derek Thornton. Everything matched what I remembered. I forwarded it to myself again, saved a copy to 3 different locations, took screenshots. If this turned into a legal thing, and Derek's parting words suggested it would, I needed evidence that I wasn't lying. At 2 in the morning, I finally gave up on sleep and started researching wire transfer fraud. The internet had plenty of horror stories: scammers who intercepted transfers by spoofing emails and providing alternate account information, identity thieves who hijacked banking credentials, even cases of bank employees redirecting funds. But all of those scenarios involved the money actually going somewhere. Someone had to receive it. In this case, Derek's bank confirmed they'd sent $200,000. My bank confirmed they'd received $5,000. The math didn't work unless one of the banks was lying, or unless the transfer had been altered in transit. Wire fraud at the institutional level? The thought made my hands cold. If this was bank-level fraud, I was completely out of my depth. I needed help, professional help. At 7:30, after 3 hours of fractured half-sleep on the couch, I called my Uncle Ray. He'd spent 30 years as a commercial lending officer before retiring, and if anyone could make sense of banking chaos, it was him.
I explained the situation, trying to keep my voice level and factual. Ray listened without interrupting, which was his way. When I finished, he was quiet for a moment. Then, "You're saying your bank shows $5,000 received. His bank shows $200,000 sent?" "Exactly, and both banks are standing by their records." Ray made a thoughtful sound. "That's not a normal error. Banks make mistakes, sure, but wire transfers have multiple verification steps. Amounts are confirmed at origination and receipt. For there to be a $195,000 discrepancy between sender and receiver records suggests something more deliberate than a clerical error." My stomach tightened. Like what? Like the transfer was altered somewhere in the chain, which would be wire fraud, federal jurisdiction, or like one of the banks is providing false information, which would also be fraud. Either way, this needs to be reported. He paused. The other possibility is that there were two separate transfers, one for $5,000, one for $195,000, and the second one went somewhere else entirely. I hadn't considered that. But Derek showed me his statement. It was one transaction, one wire transfer, $200,000 to our business account. "Are you absolutely certain?" Ray's tone had gone carefully neutral. "Could you see the full transaction details? Account number, routing number?" I tried to remember. Derek had turned his laptop to show me the bank statement. I'd seen the date, the amount, the confirmation number. Had I seen the account number? I don't think I looked at the account number. I just saw the amount and the date. Ray was quiet again. "Then you need to get a copy of his complete transaction record, account number, routing number, everything. Because if that money went to an account that isn't yours, then you're not the problem. The problem is whoever owns that account." The thought sent a jolt through me. What if Derek had sent the money to the wrong account? What if this wasn't about me at all, but about Derek making an error and now panicking, trying to figure out where his money went? But that didn't make sense either. Derek wasn't stupid. He'd worked in finance before moving to marketing. He knew how to make wire transfers. And he'd said his bank confirmed the transfer went to my account, unless they were wrong, unless someone had given him the wrong information. I thanked Ray, promised to keep him updated, and called Derek. It went to voicemail. I texted, "Need to see full transaction details from your wire transfer. Account numbers, routing numbers, everything. This might not be what we think." He didn't respond. I tried calling again an hour later. Voicemail. Again at noon. Voicemail. By evening, I was oscillating between anger and anxiety. If Derek really thought I'd stolen from him, why wasn't he responding? Why wasn't he demanding answers, pushing for information? Unless he was talking to lawyers, building a case. The thought sent me feeling sick. I'd done nothing wrong. I had no access to his money. I couldn't have stolen something I'd never received. But Derek lost $200,000, and from his perspective, I was the most obvious suspect. The money trail led to an account I controlled, or was supposed to lead there. God, I didn't even know anymore. That night, I drafted a detailed email to Derek. Subject line, "Wire transfer investigation. Need your help." I laid out everything. My bank statements, the email confirmation, my conversation with Ray, the theory about account number verification. I asked him directly for the complete transaction details from his bank. I said I wanted to solve this as much as he did, that I had nothing to gain by hiding information. If I'd actually stolen the money, where would I have put it? I hit send at 11 p.m., then lay in bed staring at the ceiling, phone on my chest, waiting for a response that didn't come. The next morning, I received an email, not from Derek, from a law office, Fitzgerald and Associates, attorneys at law. Dear Mr. My Name, we represent Derek Thornton in the matter of a wire transfer discrepancy involving Apex Solutions, LLC.
Our client has requested that all future communication regarding this matter be directed through our office. We are conducting an investigation into the whereabouts of $195,000 in missing funds. You are required to preserve all records related to Apex Solutions, LLC, including bank statements, emails, transaction histories, and any other documentation. Destruction of records may constitute spoliation of evidence. Please contact our office within 48 hours to arrange an interview. Sincerely, James Fitzgerald, Esquire.
I read it 3 times, each time feeling like I was sinking deeper into cold water. Derek had lawyered up. He'd actually hired an attorney. This wasn't a misunderstanding we could sort out over coffee anymore. This was a legal matter. I was being investigated for theft, for embezzlement, for fraud. The rational part of my brain understood Derek's position. He'd lost a catastrophic amount of money and needed answers. But the rest of me felt betrayed. We were supposed to be partners, friends. And now he'd sent lawyers after me without even waiting for my email response, without giving me a chance to explain. I forwarded the lawyer's email to Ray, then called the only other person I could think of, my college roommate, Aaron, who'd gone to law school and now worked as a public defender in Chicago. Aaron answered on the 3rd ring, sounding distracted. "What's up?" I summarized the situation as concisely as I could manage. So now his lawyer is demanding an interview and telling me to preserve records. What do I do? Aaron's distraction vanished immediately. You don't talk to his lawyer, not without your own attorney present. You don't preserve records you already have, but you don't destroy anything either. And you definitely don't try to handle this yourself. Get a lawyer, today. This isn't a dispute you can resolve with good intentions. My chest tightened. I can't afford a lawyer. I'm unemployed and living on savings. Then find one who will do a consultation pro bono, or work on contingency if this turns into a lawsuit. But you need representation, because if Derek's lawyer is already involved, they're building a case, and you're the target. I spent the rest of the day calling law offices. Most wouldn't touch it without a retainer I couldn't afford. 2 offered consultations. The first attorney listened to my story, looked at the emails I'd forwarded, and told me flat out, "This looks bad for you. The money trail points directly to your account. Your bank confirms receipt of funds. His bank confirms sending funds. The discrepancy suggests either bank error, which is unlikely given the confirmation from both institutions, or deliberate misdirection. You're going to have a hard time proving you didn't receive that money." He declined to take the case. His rejection stung worse than Derek's accusations. Even legal professionals, hearing the facts, assumed guilt. I sat in my car in the parking garage after that meeting, hands gripping the steering wheel, trying to breathe through the panic. Every system that was supposed to protect innocent people seemed to be failing. The banks couldn't explain the discrepancy. The police would see me as the obvious suspect. Even attorneys looked at the evidence and saw a thief. For the first time, I understood how people ended up convicted of crimes they didn't commit, not because the system was malicious, but because the evidence pointed in one direction, and proving otherwise required resources I didn't have. If I couldn't afford a good lawyer, if I couldn't fund a proper investigation, I'd be railroaded into a plea deal, or worse. The second attorney was Rebecca Okonjo, a financial crime specialist who'd spent a decade as a federal prosecutor before going into private practice. She listened with sharp attention, asked pointed questions, and pulled up my bank statements on her computer while I talked. "Your transaction history doesn't show any unusual activity. No large deposits, no transfers out, nothing hidden. If you'd received $195,000 and tried to conceal it, I'd expect to see movement. Structured withdrawals, cryptocurrency purchases, wire transfers to offshore accounts. This looks like a normal small business account with minimal activity." Relief flooded through me. "So you believe me?" Rebecca looked up from the screen. "Your records support your version of events.
Whether I can prove Derek's lawyer wrong is another question. We need to find out where that money actually went. And to do that, we need full transaction records from Derek's bank, not just what he's shown you. We also need to involve law enforcement. My stomach lurched. Law enforcement? If $195,000 disappeared during a wire transfer, that's federal wire fraud, federal crime, FBI jurisdiction. And the only way we're going to get to the bottom of this is with a proper investigation.
Rebecca agreed to take my case at a reduced-rate payment plan structured around my limited funds. She drafted a formal response to Derek's attorney asserting my innocence and demanding full transaction documentation. She also contacted the FBI's field office to file a wire fraud complaint. 2 days later, I met with Special Agent Kimberly Delgado from the FBI's Financial Crimes Unit at their downtown office. Agent Delgado was 40-ish, sharp-eyed, with the kind of energy that suggested she'd heard every possible variation of "I don't know where the money went," and could smell BS from across the room. She recorded our conversation, took copies of all my documentation, and asked questions that felt like they were designed to trap me. Did you have gambling debts? No. Drug habits? No. Were you in financial distress? I was unemployed, so yes, but not desperate. Any reason you'd need $200,000 quickly? I wanted to throw something. I didn't take the money. I never received it. I'm trying to figure out where it went, same as you. Agent Delgado's expression didn't change. We'll verify that. In the meantime, don't leave the state without notifying me. Don't access the business account. And if you remember anything else about that wire transfer, anyone who might have had information, any conversations about the money, you contact me immediately. She handed me her card. I left the FBI office feeling like a suspect in my own life. Rebecca had warned me this would happen. They have to investigate you, she'd said. You're the most obvious person, but if you're telling the truth, the investigation will clear you. If. That word carried so much weight. Over the next week, my world contracted to waiting. Waiting for the bank trace results. Waiting for the FBI investigation. Waiting for Derek's lawyer to respond to Rebecca's demands. I couldn't work. I couldn't focus. I kept checking my bank account compulsively, half expecting to see $200,000 appear like some delayed deposit, proof that this had all been a ridiculous mistake. It never did. Derek finally responded to my email, but it was curt. My attorney is handling this. Please direct all communication through his office. Like we hadn't spent months building a business together, like we hadn't been friends. On day 8, after the initial confrontation, Rebecca called. I have news. Derek's attorney provided the full transaction record from his bank. The wire transfer was initiated for $200,000, correct account number and routing number for Apex Solutions, LLC. But there's something interesting in the metadata. My pulse jumped. What? There's a memo field. Derek's bank allows customers to add notes to wire transfers. This transfer has a memo that says Initial Capital Investment, Apex Solutions First Installment. First installment, which suggested Derek planned to send more money later. I'd known that. We'd discussed it vaguely. Derek said he'd invest his severance gradually, depending on how things went. But why did the memo matter? The significance, Rebecca continued, is that the memo field can be edited after initiation but before completion of certain types of transfers, depending on the bank's system. And there's a timestamp discrepancy. The transfer was initiated February 14th at 9:47 a.m., but the memo field was last modified February 14th at 1:32 p.m., 4 hours and 45 minutes after the transfer was sent. Something cold settled in my chest. Someone edited the transfer after it was sent. Possibly, or Derek edited it himself. But here's the other detail.
According to the metadata, the memo field modification occurred from an IP address that doesn't match Derek's home or office. It's a residential IP in Florida. My mind went blank, then started racing. Derek lives in Colorado. He's never mentioned Florida. Exactly. So either Derek was in Florida on February 14th or someone else accessed his bank account and modified the transfer. Rebecca paused. I've asked Derek's attorney to confirm Derek's location on that date. In the meantime, I've forwarded this information to Agent Delgado. If someone hacked Derek's bank account, that changes everything.
The pieces were shifting. This wasn't about me stealing money. This was about someone else potentially stealing it. But who and how? 2 days later, Agent Delgado called me directly. "We need to meet. Bring your attorney. Something's come up." Rebecca and I met her at the FBI office that afternoon. Agent Delgado had another agent with her this time, a younger man she introduced as Agent Thomas Crawford, cybercrime specialist. "We've traced the IP address from the memo field modification," Agent Delgado began, pulling up a document on her laptop. "It belongs to a residential address in Tampa, Florida. We obtained a warrant for bank records associated with that address and found something interesting. There's an account at a different bank, Coastal Credit Union, that received a wire transfer on February 14th for $195,000. The source is listed as Derek Thornton." My breath stopped. Someone has the money. Agent Delgado confirmed. "The account is registered to a Jennifer Novak. Ring any bells?" I shook my head. "Never heard that name. Who is she?" Agent Crawford pulled up a photo. Middle-aged woman, blonde, professional headshot. "Jennifer Novak, age 51, works as an administrative assistant at a medical supply company in Tampa. No criminal record, no obvious connection to you or Derek Thornton." Then why does she have Derek's money? Agent Delgado and Agent Crawford exchanged a look. Then Delgado said, "We're still investigating that, but here's the theory. Someone with access to Derek's bank account initiated a transfer for $200,000. They split it between two accounts, $5,000 to your business account, which Derek could see and verify, making everything look legitimate, and $195,000 to Jennifer Novak's account, which Derek wouldn't see because it was a separate transaction buried in the system. Then they modified the memo field on the transfer to your account to make it look like the full $200,000 was supposed to go there." It was elegant, diabolical, brilliant in the worst possible way. "But who would have access to Derek's account?" Rebecca asked. Agent Delgado looked at her notes. "We've asked Derek for a list of anyone who might have had his banking credentials, family members, assistants, accountants. He's cooperating, but he seems genuinely shocked." "What about Jennifer Novak?" I asked. "Does she know Derek? Is there any connection?" "That's what we're trying to determine," Agent Crawford said. "We've contacted her. She claims she doesn't know Derek Thornton, doesn't know why money appeared in her account, and thought it was an error. She hasn't touched the funds." Which is either very smart or very truthful. Over the following week, the investigation accelerated. The FBI obtained warrants for Jennifer Novak's financial records, communications, and devices. They interviewed Derek extensively, going through every possible person who might have had access to his banking information. They subpoenaed records from both banks involved, looking for evidence of system compromise or insider involvement. And slowly, a pattern emerged. Jennifer Novak had a daughter named Stephanie Novak, age 27, lived in Denver, where Derek lived. Agent Delgado called me on a Thursday morning. "We need Derek to come in. Can you ask him?" I almost laughed. "Derek isn't talking to me. He thinks I stole from him." "Then have your attorney contact his attorney, because we found the connection, and Derek needs to hear this from us." 2 days later, Rebecca, Derek, Derek's attorney, James Fitzgerald, and I sat in a conference room at the FBI office while Agent Delgado laid out what they'd discovered. "Derek, I need to ask you directly. Do you know a Stephanie Novak?" Derek frowned, thinking. Then his face went pale. "Stephanie. Jesus, Stephanie."
He looked at his attorney. "She was my assistant last year, before I got laid off. She worked for me for about 6 months." Agent Delgado nodded. "Stephanie Novak was employed by your former company from March to September of last year. She would have had access to your work email." "Correct. Yes." Derek's voice had gone hoarse. "But that was months ago. She's been gone since September. Why would—"
"Because," Agent Crawford interrupted, pulling up a document on the screen, "Stephanie Novak had access to your work email, which included password reset links for your bank account. We found evidence that in January of this year, shortly before you left your company, someone used your work email to reset your personal banking password. You would have received a notification email, but it would have gone to your work account, which Stephanie still had access to because the company hadn't revoked her credentials when she left." The room went silent. Derek stared at the screen. "She hacked my bank account?" "She reset your password using your work email," Agent Delgado corrected. "Then she set up alerts to monitor your account activity. When you initiated the transfer to Apex Solutions in February, she intercepted it, used her access to create a second transfer to her mother's account for $195,000, leaving just $5,000 to go to your business partner." Derek looked like he'd been punched. "Why would she do that? I barely knew her. She was just an assistant. I gave her good references when she left." Agent Crawford pulled up another document. "Stephanie Novak has significant debt, credit cards, medical bills, student loans totaling over $80,000. Her mother, Jennifer, was facing foreclosure on her home in Tampa. They were desperate. When Stephanie saw that you'd left your company with a substantial severance package and were planning to invest it in a new business, she saw an opportunity." "So she stole from me," Derek said flatly. "She stole from you," Agent Delgado confirmed, "and she tried to frame your business partner in the process. The $5,000 going to his account was enough to make you think he'd received the full amount and stolen the rest. She was counting on you and him turning on each other while she and her mother quietly walked away with the money." I felt numb. Everything, the accusations, the lawyer, the investigation, the suspicion had been built on a lie, a calculated theft designed to destroy the trust between Derek and me. Derek turned to look at me. His face was ashen. "I'm sorry. God, I'm so sorry. I thought—" "I know what you thought," I interrupted. My voice came out harder than I intended. "You thought I stole from you. You hired a lawyer. You reported me to the FBI. You didn't trust me." "I lost $200,000, Derek shot back. "Put yourself in my position. What would you have done?" He was right. I hated that he was right. If I'd been in his shoes, seeing that discrepancy, I probably would have suspected him too, but it didn't make the betrayal hurt less. The thing was, I'd spent weeks living under that suspicion, weeks wondering if federal agents were going to show up at my door with handcuffs, weeks avoiding phone calls from my parents because I couldn't explain what was happening without sounding guilty. I'd had anxiety attacks at 3 in the morning, sweating through sheets, convinced my life was over. And Derek had triggered all of that with his assumption of guilt, his immediate leap to legal action without giving me a real chance to defend myself. Rebecca cleared her throat. "What happens now?" Agent Delgado closed her laptop. "Now we arrest Stephanie Novak. We've already frozen Jennifer Novak's account. The money is still there, untouched. Jennifer appears to be a victim in this too. She didn't know the money was stolen. Stephanie is facing federal wire fraud charges, which carry up to 20 years. The arrest happened fast. Within 48 hours, Stephanie Novak was in federal custody. The news ran stories about it. Former assistant arrested for stealing $195,000 in wire fraud scheme. Derek got his money back. The FBI released the funds from Jennifer's account, and Derek transferred them correctly this time to Apex Solutions. I received a notification on my phone. Wire transfer, $195,000 deposited to account ending in 7834. I stared at it for a long time. The investigation revealed more details as the case developed. Stephanie had been planning this for months, researching wire fraud techniques, studying the timing of banking systems. She'd created elaborate spreadsheets tracking Derek's finances, documenting his severance package, monitoring his social media for mentions of the new business. Agent Delgado showed me copies during a follow-up meeting. She was methodical, Delgado explained. Most fraud is opportunistic. Someone sees a chance and takes it. This was different. She studied Derek's patterns, learned his banking habits, identified the exact moment when he'd be moving significant funds. The $5,000 to your account was genius from a criminal perspective. It was enough to trigger Derek's confirmation bias. He expected to see money arrive. Money arrived. He didn't question the amount until later. By then, the larger transfer to her mother's account was already complete and buried in the transaction history. The detail that haunted me most was how close Stephanie had come to getting away with it. If Derek had never checked his bank statement carefully, if he'd just assumed the full amount had arrived and I'd spent it, the entire theft might have been blamed on me. Jennifer Novak would have quietly paid off her mortgage, Stephanie would have paid her debts, and I'd be facing federal charges. But something had broken between Derek and me that couldn't be easily repaired. He'd sent his lawyer after me. He assumed I was a criminal. And even though I understood why, even though the circumstances had been damning, the trust was gone. We met one more time at the same coffee shop where this had all started. Derek brought the laptop showing the full balance now in our business account, $200,000 exactly, as he'd intended. "I'm sorry," he said again. "I know that doesn't fix it, but I am sorry. I should have trusted you." I stirred my coffee, watching the cream swirl. "You did what anyone would have done. Doesn't make it right." Derek leaned back in his chair, the same gesture he'd made weeks ago when this nightmare began. "So what do we do now? Do we salvage this partnership, or is it dead?" I'd been thinking about that question for days. I don't know if I can work with someone who assumes I'm a thief the moment things go wrong. "That's fair," Derek said quietly, "but I don't know if I can let my family's financial security depend on a partnership with someone I accused of fraud. That guilt's gonna poison everything." We dissolved Apex Solutions the following week. Paperwork filed, LLC terminated, business account closed. Derek kept the money. It had been his investment, and I walked away with nothing but the relief of having my name cleared. Rebecca Okonjo sent me a final invoice with a note, "I'm proud of how you handled this. You stood your ground and let the truth speak for itself. That takes courage." Agent Delgado closed the case with accommodation for my cooperation.
6 months later, I got a job at a mid-sized tech firm doing the same kind of development work I'd been doing before. Steady paycheck, boring projects, no drama. I ran into Derek once at a conference. We nodded to each other across the room, but neither of us approached. Too much history, too much damage. The last I heard, Stephanie Novak took a plea deal, 8 years in federal prison, restitution for legal fees and damages. Jennifer Novak kept her house. Derek started a new consulting business on his own. I stopped checking his LinkedIn after a while. The experience changed how I approached business relationships. I became more cautious, more protective of information, more insistent on documented processes and verified transactions. Some people might call it paranoia. I called it survival. My new employer had me sign a dozen forms about data security, access controls, and financial procedures. I read every word. When they set up direct deposit, I verified the account information 3 times. When they asked me to be an authorized user on the company credit card, I requested detailed transaction logs and reconciliation procedures. My manager thought I was being overly thorough. I didn't care. The tech industry moved fast, and people forgot scandals faster than they happened. Within a year, most people who'd heard about the wire fraud case had moved on to newer, more dramatic stories. But I carried it with me. Every time I received a payment, I checked it twice. Every time someone asked for banking information, I verified their identity. Every time a business opportunity presented itself, I ran background checks. Trust, once broken, doesn't just heal. It calcifies into scar tissue, harder, less flexible, permanently marking the place where the wound had been. I'd learned that the people closest to your money aren't always your enemies. Sometimes they're the assistants, the background players, the ones with just enough access to cause catastrophic damage while remaining invisible. Derek had lost $200,000, but he'd gotten it back. What I'd lost, faith in partnerships, belief in good intentions, the optimism that had made me want to build something with a friend, I never recovered. The math of betrayal doesn't balance. You can restore the money, prosecute the criminal, clear your name, and still walk away missing something essential. Some partnerships aren't meant to survive, and sometimes the person you should have been most suspicious of is the one you never even considered. The quiet ones with access to everything, watching and waiting for the perfect moment to take what they want, while everyone else is too busy pointing fingers at each other to notice the real thief slipping out the back door. Thanks for watching till the end. Make sure to subscribe and like to not miss the next one.